So our topic for today is all about the human behavior theories. So over 250 theories of human behavior and therapy compete for attention in the marketplace of ideas and practice. So major theoretical approaches and schools. So one we have psychoanalytic theories and cognitive behavioral theories and the humanistic existential theories. So first is the psychoanalytic psychodynamic theories. So the unconscious is important. So people use defense mechanism when uncomfortable, utilizes the concept of transference and counterference or an counter-transference. So people find relief through catharsis. So ayan o, so yung the founder of psychoanalytic theory is si Sigmund Freud. Yan. Ayan, si Sigmund Freud yung ating founder ng psychoanalytic theory. Always remember that. Ano, psychoanalytic and psychodynamic theories or therapies. So psychoanalytical and psychodynamic therapies are based on an individual's unconscious truths and perception that have developed throughout their childhood and how this affects their current behavior and thoughts. So the past current problems stem from unresolved issues that occur in early childhood. Next, so psychoanalytic key concept. So influence of the past, so experience of the first 6 years of life are critical. Then the unconscious, so thoughts, feelings, experience keep out of awareness. The next is the anxiety and ego defenses. So yung dynamics of the anxiety are related to concept of defenses. The next is resistance. So unique meanings of resistance as a key defense. Then transference and a counter-transference. So how does operate in a counseling relationship? Then psychoanalysis. And psychoanalysis was developed by Sigmund Freud through pre-associations, dream, or fantasies. Clients can learn how to interpret deeply buried memories or experiences that may be causing them distress. Then the unconscious mind. So the unconscious mind is a reservoir of feelings, thoughts, urges, and memories that are outside of our conscious awareness, or most of the contents of the unconscious are unacceptable or unpleasant, such as feelings of pain, anxiety, or conflict. According to Freud, the unconscious continues to influence our behavior and experience, even though we are unaware of these underlying influences. Then next is ito yung first by Freud view of the human mind, the mental icebergs. So, okay, no? So, ayan, no? So, yun nakita natin sa labas, yun yung ano natin, kung mga nakita ng mga, nakikita ng ibang tao sa atin. Conscious level, no? Yung thoughts, feeling, o perception, yung pananaw natin. Pero yung hindi nakikita is yung mga pre-conscious level. So, yun yung memories, stored knowledge. So, yung unconscious level is yung violent motives, fears, unacceptable sexual desires, irrational vices, immoral urges, selfish needs, shameful experiences. Okay, yun. Then, so psychoanalytic again is main explanation for the seemingly irrational behavior can be found by analyzing the conflicting sexual and aggressive needs, fear, and wishes that are housed in the unconscious. Then psychoanalytic. So this theory describes three basic structure of personality. So yung tatlong basic structure of personality is ito yung number one. The id, the sexual and aggressive impulses so operates on pleasure principle. And the ego is reality-oriented functions. Then the number three is the superego or the moral ethical principles. So yung the id also is this is the basic psychic energy and the motivation and also operates two demands of pleasures principle strives to satisfy desire and reduce inner. Okay, so ito yung mga psychic motivation or the energy of the motivation which is operates to demand pleasure and the principle. So ano naman yung ego? So yung ego daw is deals with real world and operates to demand of reality principles. Solves problems by planning and acting. So ayan, so yung ego is with ano to siya? With planning operates the demand of the reality principles. And the super-ego is internalized social norms and the moral forces pressing on and a constraining individual action. So, so yung konsensya nandyan no, sa super-ego. Konsensya talaga dyan sa super-ego natin. Kasi ito yung pangatlo na stage or personality structure. Ay. So what happened when the ego cannot deal with the demands of our desire, the constraint of reality, and our own moral standards? So according to Freud, we develop anxiety. Anxiety acts as a signal to the ego that things are not going right. So ayan. So yung ano daw yung anxiety daw is act a signal. So no, yun yung signal na to the ego that things are not going right. So, yan, pag naramdaman mo yung anxiety, that means yung ego mo is you are going to not right decision. So, defense mechanism. So, in order to deal with anxiety, Freud believed that defense mechanisms helps shield the ego from the conflicts created by id, superego, and reality. So, ayan, meron tayong tinatawag na mga defense mechanism. Ano kaya itong mga defense mechanism na ito? So, there are a number of defense mechanisms that have been described by the researchers. Sigmund Freud's daughter Anna Freud described 10 defense mechanisms used by the ego. So, number one is the denial. So, when you see denial daw is probably one of the best known defense mechanism used often to describe situations in which people seem unable to face reality or admit an abuse. Truth example is he's in denial. And denial is an outright refusal to admit or recognize that something has occurred or is currently occurring. Drug addicts or alcoholics often deny that they have a problem, while victims of traumatic even may deny that the events ever occurred. The next is we have the repression. So when we say repression acts to keep information out of conscious. Conscious awareness, however, these memories don't just disappear. They continue to influence our behavior. For example, a person who has repressed memories or abuse suffered or a child may later have difficult forming relationship. And then sometimes we do this continuously by forcing the unwanted information out of our awareness, which is known as suppression. But it is usually believed to our or to occur unconsciously. So displacement. So displacement involves taking out our frustration, feelings, and impulses on, on people or objects that are less threatening. So rather than express our anger in ways that could lead to negative consequences, like arguing with our boss, or we instead express our anger towards a person or object that possess no traits such as our spouses, children, or pets. Next is the sublimation. So the sublimation is a defense mechanism that allow us to act out of unacceptable impulses by converting this behavior into a more acceptable form. For example, so the person experiencing extreme anger might take up kickboxes or boxing as a means of venting frustration. Freud believed that sublimation was a sign of maturity that allows people to function normally in socially acceptable ways. Then next is the projection. So when we see projection is a defense mechanism that involves taking our own unacceptable qualities or feelings and ascribing them to other people. For example, if you have a strong dislike for someone, you might instead believe that he or she does not like you. The next is the intellectualization. So when we say intellectualization, works reduced to anxiety by thinking about events in a cold, clinical way. This defense mechanism allows us to avoid thinking about the or stressful emotional aspect of the situation and instead focus only on the intellectual component. For example, a person who has just been diagnosed with a terminal illness might focus on learning everything about the disease in order to avoid distress and remain distant from the reality of the situation. Next, so we have the rationalization. So when you see rationalization is a defense mechanism that involves explaining an unacceptable behavior or feelings in a rational or logical manner, avoiding the true reason for the behavior. For example, so a person who is turned down for a date might rationalize the situation by saying they were not attracted to the other person anyway, or a student might blame a poor exam score on the instructor rather than his or her lack of preparation. Next is the regression. So the regression when confront, confronted by stressful events, people sometimes abandon coping strategies and revert to patterns of behavior used earlier in development. For example, an individual fixated at an earlier development stage might cry or suck upon hearing unpleasant news. An individual fixated at the oral stage might begin eating or smoking excessively or might become very verbally aggressive. And Fixation at the anal stage might result in excessive readiness or massiveness. And the next is the reaction formation. So when we say reaction formation, wait, nawala, nawala. Reaction formation is reduce anxiety by taking up opposite feelings, impulse, or behavior. An example of reaction formation would the threatening or someone you strongly dislike in a excessively friendly manner in order to hide your true feelings. Then they are using reaction formation as a defense mechanism to hide their true feelings by having in the exact opposite. Then other defense mechanism is we have hoy, focus lang. Yeah. Other defense mechanism is we have the acting out. So the individual copes with stress by engaging in action rather than reflecting upon internal feelings. The next is affiliation. It involves turning to the other people for support. The next is aim inhibition. The individuals accept uh, modified forms of their original goals. Example, becoming a high school basketball coach rather than a professional athlete. And next is altruism, satisfying eternal needs through helping others. And also we have the avoidance or avoidance, refusing to deal with or encounter unpleasant object or situation. And compensation. So overachieving in one area to compensate for failures in another. And also you have humor, pointing out the funny or ironic aspect of a situation. So kahit hindi nakakatawa, pinagtawanan pa rin, okay? Then passive aggression. So indirectly expressing anger. So while defense mechanism can be unhealthy, it can also be adaptive and allows us to function normally. So the greatest problems arise when defense mechanisms are overused in order to avoid dealing with problems. Ayan. So psychoanalytic techniques. So pre-association or talking therapy. So individual reports immediately without censoring any feelings or thoughts. Then we have interpretation. So counselors is points out, explains, and teaches the meaning of whatever is revealed. And also dream analysis. So dream are the royal road to the unconscious. Dreams can be productive work with in a group setting. Client can share and explore dream during the counseling session. Then contributions and strength of the approach. So important to understand how past contributes to present problem. So provides conceptual framework to understand an anxiety and defense mechanism or the defense. Yeah, defense mechanism or the anxiety and the defense. So the limitation of the approaches. So limitation based on long-term approach for many clients critique from feminist perspective to masculine. So it depends yung atake or it depends yung mga approaches na ginagamit natin, it depends sa kailang feminist or to the masculine. So the approach has not given full attention to social and cultural factors. And The cognitive behavioral. We are in a number two. Cognitive behavioral. So this is based on the premise that primary learning comes from experience. So the initial concern in the therapy is to help the client analyze behavior, define problems, and select goals. So behavioral therapy. So behavioral therapy is focused on an individual learn or condition behavior and how this can be changed. The approach assumes that if a behavior can be learned, then it can be unlearned or reconditioned. So it is useful for dealing with issues such as phobias or addictions. So behavioral theories. So basic assumptions of the behavioral theories is the maladaptive behavior. Okay. Remember that maladaptive behavior. Okay, let's continue. Maladaptive behavior are learned and can be unlearned, and that new, more adaptive behavior can be learned. So, has been applied to a wide range of disorder and the problems. So, behavioral theories or the operant conditioning. So, letter A is we have the reinforcement. So, the reinforcement is lead to an increase in the desirable behavior preceding the reinforcer. So, we have the positive and the negative. So B is the punishment. So the punishment is to use to decrease an undesirable behavior. So the positive and the negative. Yeah, that's example. So cognitive. We have also the cognitive, is means cognitive. We define this as therapy that is based on the belief that our thoughts are directly connected to how we feel. The cognitive therapies includes rational motives, cognitive behavioral uh, reality, and transactional analysis. So, ayan, so we have your thoughts and your behavior and your emotions. And then there is a CBT. This is CBT, cognitive behavioral theory. So, cognitive theory are Aaron Beck, that was according to Aaron Beck, a psychological problem stems from disturbed thinking based on the underlying cognitive schemata. So cognitive schemata, way of viewing self. So world, past, future. So cognitive therapist challenges clients' distorted thinking through a process of shaking beliefs against reality evidence gathering approach. And so again, when you see CBT is a cognitive behavioral therapy. So cognitive behavioral therapy, it combines cognitive and behavioral therapies. The approach focuses on the thoughts, emotions, physical, feelings, and action, and teaches clients how each one can have an effective on the other. So cognitive behavioral therapy or ABC method could be described as as I think, so as I feel and do. In any given situation, you have so activating events. So the actual event and the client's immediate interpretation of the client events or the events. So beliefs about the events, this evaluation can be rational or irrational. So consequences, how you feel and that and what you do or other thoughts. So we have the activating the events, so that is the sequence or the what we call this sequence. We have first is activating the event. So in the activating event, we have the actual event, client's immediate interpretational events, and B is the beliefs. So evaluation, rational and irrationals. And C is the consequences. So we have the emotions, behaviors, and other thoughts. So in the charts, previews, and others, and after slide, you can see how that when a negative events happens, one can interpret it positivity or negativity. How one interprets in affects how one feels, think, and behaves. So negative events, so we have A and the negative event A. So rational belief and so yung irrational belief is yung kinalabasan niya din sa letter C is unhealthy negative emotion. So sa health, ano no, sa negative o sa rational belief, healthy negative emotion dun sa letter C. And the A, B, C, D, E, and F theory of the personality is activating event, supports again, activating event, then beliefs, then consequence, emotional, and the behavioral. And then also next is the disputing intervention. Then E is effect of effective philosophy is developed. And letter F is new feelings. Yung nararamdaman, ano yung nararamdaman. Then the role of the social worker in cognitive behavioral therapy is to challenge false beliefs. So the lies we tell ourselves. So these distributions in our thinking includes one is black and white. So thinking are either or thinking. Number two is making unfair comparison. So usually the negative, no. Then three is filtering. So honing is on the negative, forgetting the positive. And number four, personalizing the self-blame game. And five, mind reading. So thinking we know what others think or negativity. And six is the catastrophizing. So imagining the worst case scenario. And number seven is overgeneralizing. So I always mess up, ganon. So confusing fact with feelings. So if I think or feel like this, like that. So way then my thoughts, feelings must be correct. So number nine, leveling. So I'm a closer or a loser versus I have made a mistake. Then number 10, can't stand this. Being unnecessarily intolerant. So what is WDEP? So first is one, no, one, once, what do you want to be and do? Then D is doing and direction. What are you doing? Then the next is evaluation. Does your present behavior have reasonable chance of getting you what you want? The next is planning. Identify ways to fulfill their wants and needs. So Samek. So simple way or simple, easy to understand, specific and concrete. The next is attainable or yung A, attainable within capacities and motivation of the client. And M is measurable, Are the changes observable and helpful? Then letter I is immediate and involved. What can be done today? Or what can you do? Letter C is control. Can you do this to yourself? Or will you be dependent on others? So that's it.